Money King. Jojo, overwhelmed with emotions and disbelief, was grappling with the consequences of a single, unfortunate mistake that had left him and his friend in turmoil. The loud cries that pierced the air kept him from passing out after the distressing events that had unfolded just hours ago. Jojo and Abraham, fueled by anxiety and desperation, walked the alleys and narrow streets of their slum residence. They called out Abraham's child's name into the darkness, their voices echoing in the quiet of the night. Their relentless search led them through the alleys, illuminated only by the dim glow of streetlights. Hours passed as Jojo and Abraham continued their quest, their worry growing by the minute. They approached some street children and inquired if they had seen a child matching Abraham's description, but the street kids shook their heads, bearing no knowledge of the missing child's whereabouts. Undeterred, they desperately shouted Abraham's child's name into the night, hoping for a response, but the child remained elusive. Their frantic cries roused the curiosity of some local residents who emerged from their homes to investigate the commotion. A few neighbors made light of the situation, suggesting that Jojo and Abraham might be night runners attempting to incite fear or chaos. As the night wore on, more neighbors joined the search party, recognizing Abraham and offering their help. Together, they combed the vast slum area, checking every possible corner they could cover in the dead of night. Their relentless search eventually brought Jojo and Abraham to the residence of the local chief. The chief, puzzled by the late-night disturbance, stepped out of his humble abode to understand the commotion. Desperation led Abraham to approach the chief, revealing that his child had been kidnapped by the notorious Untouchables gang. He explained the futile attempts they'd made to involve the police, who claimed the matter was beyond their jurisdiction. The chief, well acquainted with Abraham's standing in the community, empathized with his situation. He made a call, reassuring Jojo and Abraham that help was on the way. Still, the minutes that stretched into hours felt unbearable, and the fear of what might be happening to Abraham's child gnawed at their souls. In an act of desperation, Abraham attempted to march out alone in search of his child, but the chief intervened, urging him to remain patient and trust the promised assistance. Sharing the same anxiety, Jojo convinced Abraham to stay, arguing that they should trust the chief's advice and await potential intel on the gang's whereabouts. They anxiously waited until morning, their hope slowly turning into a gnawing despair. The expected intel hadn't materialized, prompting Jojo and Abraham to quietly slip away from the chief's camp. A sense of foreboding told them that something wasn't right, and they sensed that time was of the essence. Abraham, unable to contain the anguish in his heart, headed home, where he hoped to find his child miraculously returned. He opened the door, yearning for good news, but the sight that met his eyes was one of heart-wrenching sorrow. His wife, overwhelmed by pain and grief, could hardly bear to look at him. She blamed Abraham for the child's kidnapping, and their home was heavy with the weight of their shared loss. Abraham's wife revealed that she couldn't bring herself to leave home and sell vegetables in the market, fearing for her safety and the potential kidnapping of another child. She implored Abraham to stay with their remaining children, but he was acutely aware that one of their own was missing and could be facing unimaginable hardship. After a moment of reflection, Abraham left his home, torn between the family he had to protect and the child he had to save. He contacted his workplace to explain the emergency, and some of his friends from the construction site opted to take a forced leave to support one of their own. When Jojo returned from his home, he brought along dough that he had prepared before addressing Abraham's emergency. He handed the food to Abraham's wife and strongly urged Abraham to continue the search. Abraham consented, promising his wife that he would leave no stone unturned to bring their child back. That morning, an emergency meeting was called, bringing together most residents of the area to rally behind one of their own. Jojo, speaking passionately, condemned the actions of the Untouchables cartels and called for unity in eradicating them from their community. Despite the collective resolve, some voiced their feeling of helplessness against the formidable gang. Jojo offered a daring plan: to wait for the Untouchables minions to collect their ill-gotten gains, then capture one of them to extract information about the gang's hideout. The proposal garnered unanimous support. After the meeting, some community members went to their workplaces, while Abraham and Jojo assembled a search party, committed to finding Abraham's missing child. On that particular day, the Untouchables minions were conspicuously absent from their usual illicit activities of extorting traders in the market. This unexpected development raised suspicions that something significant was unfolding within the gang, perhaps due to an external order or a looming threat. Jojo expressed his skepticism regarding the authorities' willingness to help, and he began to harbor suspicions about the local chief's involvement with the gang. He pointed out that the chief had failed to provide any leads on the child's whereabouts, even after keeping them waiting for hours. Together, Jojo and Abraham pressed on with their search, scouring the slum for hours. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the members of the search party began to disperse, leaving Jojo and Abraham alone. Exhausted and deflated, Abraham suggested they call it a night and resume their search the following day. Jojo, recognizing Abraham's fatigue and the weight of his worry, agreed. He offered to walk Abraham home, providing some reassurance and comfort along the way. Abraham, upon returning to his home, was met with a heavy atmosphere of sadness. His wife had not found solace during his absence, and the visible pain in her eyes intensified when she saw him return without their child. The family, which had already been under tremendous stress, could hardly eat. Abraham's feelings of defeat grew stronger, yet he knew he had to maintain his strength for his family, who needed him more than ever. That night, after their remaining children had finally fallen asleep, Abraham's wife, consumed by the bitterness of losing their child to the kidnappers, lashed out at him. In the midst of her despair, she blamed Abraham for not protecting their children adequately. Her painful and regrettable words pierced Abraham's heart, further deepening the depression that had already settled upon him. Unable to bear the weight of her accusations, Abraham left the house in the middle of the night, tears of frustration and sorrow in his eyes. Outside his home, Abraham sat in solitude, weeping openly for his missing child. He was now consumed by desperation, willing to do whatever it took to bring the child back. In his darkest hour, he thought of his loyal friend Jojo and began walking towards Jojo's house. To his surprise, Abraham encountered Jojo on the way. Jojo had been on his way to alert Abraham about the critical information he had uncovered. He told Abraham about witnessing the chief in conversation with someone who appeared to be a member of the Untouchables gang. Jojo suspected that the chief was involved in some way, aiding the gang to thwart Abraham, given Abraham's political influence in the community. This suspicion had only deepened when community members rallied to assist in the search for Abraham's child. But Jojo's covert mission didn't end there. Carefully, he had tracked the chief and his mysterious companion to their destination. He believed he had found the den where the Untouchables were hiding, and he was confident that Abraham's child might be held there. This revelation sparked a glimmer of hope within Abraham, and without thinking, he implored Jojo to lead him to the location immediately. Abraham's desperation and anger were palpable. He wanted swift action. However, Jojo hesitated. He was well aware of the dangers they might face if they rushed in unprepared. The gang had a reputation for being heavily armed and was rumored to have connections with the police. He knew that a reckless move could quickly escalate the situation from bad to worse. In an attempt to calm his friend, Jojo explained that, in order to ensure the child's safe return, they needed a well-thought-out plan. He urged Abraham to understand that this wasn't a movie but real life, where one wrong move could have dire consequences. Abraham, though, driven by his love for his child and his desperation, demanded the location immediately. He felt that Jojo's hesitation might cost them precious time. Jojo, understanding Abraham's anguish, remained patient. He knew that helping his friend and rescuing the child was their shared goal. Jojo attempted to soothe Abraham's frustration, emphasizing that a carefully devised strategy was the key to success. Acknowledging the truth in Jojo's words, Abraham reluctantly agreed to the need for a well-thought-out plan. He realized that their journey ahead was fraught with danger, and the child's safety depended on their decisions. As Abraham began making calls to summon his closest friends from work, who were more than capable of providing support, Jojo focused on mapping out the area he had scouted. Their access to the territory was limited, and they would be venturing into the unknown, partially blind. The fate of Abraham's child hung in the balance, and the challenges ahead were daunting. Would Jojo and Abraham succeed in infiltrating the gang's hideout and rescuing the child? Would they embark on this perilous mission alone, or would they find allies willing to join their cause? The next episode of this harrowing journey awaits, so stay tuned, and don't forget to like and subscribe to follow their quest for the Money King.